Okay, so this is take 2 of a video which I originally recorded the audio for, but it got deleted, so now I'm going to do it over again. Hope it turns out good. This video is going to be about how the media has tried to expose two famous internet celebrities who'd kind of been branching out beyond the internet. I'm talking about PewDiePie and Milo Yiannopolous. So, let's start with PewDiePie. That happened a bit earlier. Basically, the Wall Street Journal took a lot of Nazi jokes he made and basically edited them to make it seem like he actually believed the stuff he was saying, that it wasn't just him trying to be an edgelord, which I think was able to convince a more mainstream media audience because those Jew jokes were meant for an audience of these like teenage edgelords who go on the internet and weren't really meant for a mainstream audience. So I think something was lost in translation between those two markets. And the story in PewDiePie's case, it was just complete bullshit. He's not a Nazi, and I don't know how they could have thought that at all. The next story involves Milo Yiannopolous, who'd been like gaining traction. It was a huge news story when people protested him with a riot, and then he went on Bill Maher. But then people kind of dug up an old clip from the Drunken Peasants podcast, which I'm a fan of, and a lot of them, they didn't really attribute it to the Drunken Peasants. They just kind of said a podcast, which is kind of shitty, but to be fair, the actual Drunken Peasants, their business model has pretty much been taking stuff that other people made and commenting on it. And usually I think their comments definitely add value, but they tend to really like bank on fair use a lot. So it's kind of odd to see them when someone like who's bigger than them uses their content for comments on it. It's kind of odd to see them getting angry at that. But that's another digression. So basically, Milo Yiannopolous, he basically defended having sex with 13-year-olds, which... So yeah, you can see why a lot of people started to dump him after that. He had to resign from Breitbart. He had a book deal which got cancelled, and he got disinvited from CPAC. And the one thing which a lot of these things didn't mention is that he was kind of talking about an experience that he had when he was around 13 with an older man and trying to contextualize it. So a lot of people have analyzed this as a coping mechanism of his, which on one hand, I think I don't want to question people's coping mechanisms, but on the other hand, if he believes that, like, if he still believes to this day that, like, a 13-year-old can consent to sex, which seemed to be what he was saying, and he talked about how like these 13-year-olds, they need like an older man to mentor them and help them discover themselves as sex. And if he still thinks that, what happens if he meets a 13-year-old who he thinks needs to be mentored? And like this isn't some crazy scenario, because like a lot of pedophiles, that's how it gets started. A lot of pedophiles were molested as children, and then that's part of why they become pedophiles. So I really hope he's able to kind of resolve that with himself and maybe get off on his feet, because, I mean, yeah, I think it would be pretty hard for him to maintain any level of fame if he keeps going around defending sex with 13-year-olds. But a lot of people have classified these two attacks as a plot by the mainstream media to undermine alternative media, which isn't something I really subscribe to. Because in this case, I like to use a principle called Hanlon's razor, which basically says, never attribute to malice what can be explained by stupidity. Or in other words, like, don't assume that there was this big plot to do something when it was mostly just a fuck-up. And I think in these cases it really was just a fuck-up, because I think these people they wanted a scoop, and they didn't really do their background research to see that they were kind of taking this out of context. And with Milo Yiannopolous, I'd say, and they didn't really take it that much out of context. With PewDiePie, they definitely did screw up the coverage, but with Milo Yiannopolous, it didn't really seem like they were taking him out of context to make him. They didn't really change the meaning of what he was saying that much with the context. So I don't think it's likely that this was some attempt by the mainstream media to, like, get its power back by taking out these alternate media figures. I think it honestly was just some people realizing that these guys were getting famous and figuring that they could get a quick headline by finding some salacious detail about something they said and publishing it. Which I think the media, they should vet more, and a lot of people have said that, like, they've started calling, like, all of the mainstream media fake news, and they've said it's the same thing as any fake news or when Donald Trump lies, which I have to disagree. The media isn't always completely honest, and it really needs to work on that. But I feel like saying the mainstream media is dishonest and fake news is dishonest, it's like saying Florida is hot and the sun is hot. Like, yeah, they're both true, but, I mean, they're not true in the same way. One is clearly, like, fake news is clearly more dishonest than, like the stuff that's been called fake news is clearly more dishonest than the mainstream media. Like the Trump administration, they've literally made up 2 terrorist attacks. Like, can you imagine if CNN had a report saying, like, that there was a massacre at Bowling Green and dozens were dead, and then people researched it and found out that they just completely made that up whole cloth? Or if they reported that Frederick Douglass was still alive, like Donald Trump said he was? I mean, they're just not doing that. I mean, sometimes their coverage is far from perfect, but it's nowhere near the scale of dishonesty which you see from this fake news or from the Trump administration. So I know this video has kind of been rambling and going around, but I just kind of wanted to get my thoughts out on this, and I didn't really feel like writing a script for this. I didn't feel like it warranted it. But my next video will hopefully it'll be a scripted one. It'll be more polished. It'll be coming out soon. So please like and subscribe if you liked the video and if you want to see more of me. And most importantly, go into the comments and tell me what you think of this video.